Up next then, it's the Pitbike 140s who are going to be making their way out onto this damp grid. Last time it was wet was back at Lid, and we saw Jamie King take a commanding victory in the wet at Lid, so possibly we'll be looking out to do the same thing here, but it's Eddie O'Shea who's going to line up on the pole position for this one. With Jamie King, who's going to be looking to repeat that wet weather victory.
Yeah, he will indeed. Jamie was very strong indeed at Lid in the wet, so I'm sure his eyes will be on the prize of picking up victory. So Eddie O'Shea, however, lining up in pole. Charlie Nesbitt in second, with Harrison Crosby in third. Then we've got Ryan Hitchcock in fourth. Rossi Banham in fourth, Harrison Crosby in fifth, Taylor Lawrence in sixth, then we've got Bernie Hook seventh, Jamie King eighth, so he's got a lot of work to do. Chris Wells ninth, with Callum Wybrow 10th, Darren Anderson in 11th, with Thomas Boone in 12th, James Cook in 13th, with Mark Evans 14th, Will Burke in 15th, with Adam Sweeney 16th, Marco Pandolfo in 17th, Kevin Gritton 18th, Nathan Riggy in 19th, and Jack Andrews in 20th position.
Yep, and it's going to be all about that battle at the front, but wet weather conditions could throw a spanner in the works here with Eddie O'Shea on pole position. He's also on pole position for the Extreme 200, so a really good showing from Eddie O'Shea so far this weekend, really putting the hammer down in qualifying in the dry, but in the wet it's going to be a completely different story for these Pitbike 140 riders. Jamie King, last year's champion in the Pitbike 140s, a bit of a wet weather specialist as we saw at Lid, so watch out for him as well. There's your front row then, Eddie O'Shea and Rhys Stevenson lining up on that front row. Eddie O'Shea, we know, is a name we know very well, has been around all season, and also in the British Talent Cup. You can see the British Talent Cup leathers on that front row of the grid. Number 23, Rhys Stevenson, is a name we're not too familiar with, but clearly quite quick around this Whilton Mill circuit on these pit bikes. So a packed grid, as you can see there. Marco Pandolfo in the middle of the grid, trying to figure out where his grid slot is at the moment. Marco Pandolfo was a rider we saw yesterday, Gareth, seemed to have walked more laps of Whilton Mill than he's actually ridden around it. Seemed to be walking back to the pit lane always with some sort of technical problem. Yeah,
unfortunately for Marco, we coined him Walco Pandolfo due to the fact that he was unfortunately suffering bike issues, but you can see that's Charlie Nesbitt just rolling back into position. He'll be starting from third on the grid, but watch out for him. We know he's very, very strong indeed, and these bikes, a lot more power, a little bit more grip than the we saw from the AC40 pros and rookies, so they might be able to just throw it into these corners. And the likes of Charlie, we've seen him sliding in the dry. What's he going to be like in these wet conditions?
Well, I'm sure we can see some sliding around, especially if he's sliding it around in the dry. Expect to see a little bit of rear end movement in the wet as well, but hopefully not too much for the number 86 as we just make sure everyone's lined up in the right spot here on the grid. This is FAB Racing, the Mini Bike British Championships, been host to the Mini Bike British Championships for a very long time. Since 2004 we've had exciting action here at FAB Racing, but the tension is building now on the grid as riders are making sure they're in the right grid slots still, but their attention will soon be going to the lights and to this race one for the Pitbike 140 Championships. Their eyes now are on the lights then as we wait for the lights to come on, and they are on, and soon we will be away, and we are away here for race one for the Pitbike 140. It's a good start from Charlie Nesbitt, dropping a leg into turn one, dropping a leg into turn two as well, trying to feel where the conditions are, making sure he's staying on, but a brilliant start from him. Eddie O'Shea dropping through the order, and you can see already the number 76 of Jamie King getting really keen to make his way up through the order. He was looking really menacing on that back straight, and he's all over the back of Eddie O'Shea, and is now moving up into third position. Looks like he's got a little bit more pace than the riders around him, where they're all through Christmas curve safely in this race, so perhaps, like you say, a little bit more grip on these bigger pit bikes. They'll be running, most of them will be running pit, and that's Marco Pandolfo down at at turn 6. So the rider who's walked more laps of this track than has ridden it is down, but he's now got his bike restarted and back into this race. Marco Pandolfo crashing out, but now restarting. But it's all about the front as Jamie King now has taken the lead. We said he was good in the wet, and he's proving it here. But what will Charlie Nesbitt be able to do? You'd like to think Charlie Nesbitt is going to have a go at following the number 76 of Jamie King and seeing if he can match that pace. Some moves being made a bit further down as well there. A lot of battles all through this grid. A packed grid for the Pitbike 140s, which are very... being such a full grid, we've seen them lose the moto team category that was in this championship as Charlie Nesbitt makes his way up on Jamie King up at Christmas Curve. And with number 23 there, Rhys Stevenson making his way through as well, and Eddie O'Shea. So action all through at the moment as Jamie King losing positions left, right and centre here. Did a good job to make his way up, but now he's losing positions at every corner.
Yeah, Charlie doing his best to confuse us by wearing a different helmet in both qualifying and in the race. But you see a rider off to the side. It was Rossi Banham off the start, couldn't get the bike started, pulled off the side. And unfortunately for Rossi, he's riding hurt this weekend after a big crash last weekend. So for Rossi, it's not been a great start this weekend, probably not a great week either. But yeah, Jamie King is currently leading this one. Charlie Nesbitt unable to close him down. We saw how strong Jamie is in the wet. Charlie in that new lid, and is maybe not showing as much flamboyance as what we usually see from him, as you see the 5.76 there, and that's off to the side. But yeah, it's a lot of riders. Eddie O'Shea starting to close in on the 74 for third position, and but yeah, it's that's Eddie O'Shea still trying to close in. That's the 23 of Rhys Stevenson. They've got the 86 and the 8 all flashing towards each towards the camera and past the camera as they enter turn 6 at Ashby and exit out of a tricky left or tricky right-hander hairpin on using that slightly grippier exit on that concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the paint down there, which won't be grippy at all. But then when you go out, you've got the concrete that hasn't been painted on. We've seen a lot of riders using that in the dry. Personally, I'd be a bit wary of using that in the wet, but it could be something that we see them using. But I would be sticking it to the tarmac in this one. It's slippy enough around this Whilton Mill circuit without going all over the paint. But riders doing a brilliant job to stay on the bikes in this one. A lot less crashes than we saw in the mini moto races, all running PMT wets in this one, and doing a good job in this race. Rhys Stevenson there is then, who's leading this one ahead of Charlie Nesbitt. Eddie O'Shea now looking really menacing behind Charlie Nesbitt, trying to get in real close, and as Charlie Nesbitt gets a brilliant drive out of turn 5 and makes a move stick into turn 6. What can he do now? He's in front. Will he be able to pull away, or will Rhys Stevenson be able to keep up with the pace of the number 86? Eddie O'Shea now is going to be thinking he's going to be wanting to try and make a move on Rhys Stevenson to make sure Charlie Nesbitt doesn't get away. Jamie King, the number 76, in 4th spot still, as Eddie O'Shea has a look at the number 23 of Rhys Stevenson. Can't quite make a move stick down into turn 9. We saw a big incident earlier on in the Extreme 200s with a few riders go down there on some spilt oil, but will still be quite slippy in the wet as well. So Charlie Nesbitt then doing a brilliant job out the front of this race. Having a look behind him, he's got a bit 1.2 second lead over the line. They did a 1 minute 3.5, so quicker than anyone else by quite some margin on that last lap. So finding grip that no one else is able to do. But now Eddie O'Shea is up into second place. Will he be able to close down Charlie Nesbitt? He's dropping a leg down into turn 6, just trying to feel where the grip is around this circuit and seeing if he can reel in Charlie Nesbitt. He looks to be doing a good job of it. Gets a good bit of lean angle around this, around those corners there, and looking really confident. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see Eddie O'Shea catching Charlie Nesbitt. But we know how good Charlie Nesbitt is with bike control. We saw him sliding around all day yesterday.
Yeah, we saw Eddie O'Shea, of course, starting on the pole Charlie's made his way up from third of the grid, leading this one. Reece Stevenson was holding position in second, but will now drop down to third place after losing that position on that last lap to Eddie O'Shea. Eddie is just on the fastest lap, a 101.8, so they are getting quicker. They were doing 105s at the start of this one. We're now up to a 101.8, so the riders getting a little bit more confidence. There's always a tag there between the front and the rear wheel of the 15, and so that's that was close. We've got another rider down, and it's Marco Pandolfo once again having issues on that bike, so struggling once again is Marco Pandolfo.
Yeah, it just looks like the seat unit on that bike had come off there, and that's Eddie O'Shea as well that's gone down. So Eddie O'Shea looking to try and restart this race. He was in second place, was trying to close down Charlie Nesbitt, had closed down slightly over the line, but now there'll be a big gap between him and Charlie Nesbitt out the front, so that's going to promote Reece Stevenson up into second position and possibly Jamie King onto the podium. So the rider who was really good in the wet at Lid also doing a good job here as well. So Charlie Nesbitt it is that leads ahead of Reece Stevenson, Jamie King, Callum Wybrow in there as well. Mark Evans in sixth place ahead of Jack Andrews, Darren Anderson, Adam Sweeney and Nathan Riggy rounding out your top 10 at the moment. Eddie O'Shea then drops down to fifth place after crashing out, so he's got some work to do. Will he be able to catch the likes of Callum Wybrow and Jamie King to try and get back onto the podium? It's a bit of a tall order for him, but still 4 laps to go in this race, so plenty of time for Eddie O'Shea to be able to get that done and try and catch the number 76 of Callum Wybrow, who's in fourth place, with Eddie O'Shea, the number 8, in fifth at the moment.
Yep, it's a good race so far for Callum Wybrow. He's currently standing fifth in the PB 140 standings, yet to pick up a win or a podium. So to be up in fifth is showing that he is picking up the results. He's probably just needs to aim a little bit higher, but he's moved up into fourth place as Charlie comes across the line and goes quickest with a 101.4. As you can see on screen, that is the 67 of Callum Wybrow. So the man in fifth place in the championship is he can see ahead of him, can see Eddie O'Shea. So Callum has dropped back down to fifth position after gaining that place in the last lap. Eddie O'Shea now moving back up into fourth. So Callum back down into fifth place, but still on for some decent points. Charlie Nesbitt, race leader, has once again gone purple. He is, of course, on the 86 bike. So the 86 is enjoying himself out there, now stretching that gap out. Started in third and struggled to get to the front, but now he's got to the front. 7.5 seconds he's built.
Yeah, he's been absolutely dominant at the front, and Eddie O'Shea on an absolute charge now, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see the number 8 catching Jamie King and challenging for the podium despite crashing out of this race. He already made his way through on Callum Wybrow, and with 3 laps to go, Eddie O'Shea is putting down a blistering pace that's a good second and a bit quicker than Jamie King at the moment. So you can just see there Charlie Nesbitt coming up to some lap traffic. That's Marco Pandolfo, who's just suffered from 2 crashes in this race, so that's why he's getting lapped there by the number 86 of Charlie Nesbitt. But Charlie really putting out a brilliant pace at the front. 9.7 seconds it was over the line, and that battle for third between King and O'Shea really closing in now. Eddie O'Shea only a second behind Jamie King now, so Eddie O'Shea could bridge that gap to Jamie King and onto the podium. He did a 101.9 on that last lap, with Jamie King on a 104.4, so expect to see Eddie O'Shea catching the number 76 of Jamie King and on this with 2 laps to go in this race, as number 86 there, Charlie Nesbitt, comes round to lap Rossi Banham there, just struggling in wet weather conditions. Like we said earlier, he's riding injured at the moment, Gareth, after a crash last week in the junior supersport category at Donington Park. So he's just going round with a little bit of pain in this one and just struggling in the wet weather conditions. Charlie Nesbitt looks behind him. He's got a hefty lead, 11.7 seconds. And like we said there, Eddie O'Shea moves up into third place. He's, after that crash, caught down Callum Wybrow, caught down the number 76 of Jamie King, and made his way up into a podium position now, and could possibly even be challenging for second place, because he's quite a bit quicker than Reece Stevenson. So on this final lap, Eddie O'Shea could take second place from Reece Stevenson.
Yep, Charlie Nesbitt, as soon as he got to the front, has controlled this one, but Eddie O'Shea will be trying to close in. He's currently, his last lap time is 2 seconds faster than Reece Stevenson, which means that he will catch him by the end of this lap if he keeps on him. But Charlie Nesbitt has got to the front, led from the front, cut through the traffic, done everything needed. He's going to come across the line, pick up the first win on the weekend here at the PB 140s. Charlie Nesbitt is your race winner here at the first race of their weekend. What a victory from him once again, picking up another win on the season, and he can add that to his ever-growing tally across the line. Eddie O'Shea does get Reece Stevenson on the line by 0.6 of a second. It was going to be close. Eddie O'Shea put in some mega laps in that those last edge-ins of that race, catches Reece Stevenson and demotes him down to third. Jamie King holds on to fourth place. Callum Wybrow is going to be in fifth place. But what a last lap there from Eddie O'Shea. 2 seconds down, he manages to claw it back and take second place.
Yeah, he showed some tremendous pace to be able to claw that back in. And of course, both Charlie Nesbitt and Eddie O'Shea will be back out later on in the Extreme 200s. So they'll have had some experience now in the wet weather conditions, and they'll have the upper hand over their rivals later on in the Extreme 200s. And Charlie Nesbitt looking really comfortable in these wet weather conditions. And so is Eddie O'Shea, who's really put the hammer down. Really unfortunate that he crashed out, because it would have been good to see a battle between Eddie O'Shea and Charlie Nesbitt, but Eddie O'Shea still picking up a brilliant second place despite that crash. But yeah, like we say, these riders now, Charlie Nesbitt and Eddie O'Shea, have had some experience now that they can take into the Extreme 200 race later on.